Welcome back, everybody, to the TOB.Podcast. Woo! My name is Summer.
And Marie.
Queen.
And we are trying our best.
Professionals.
Podcasters.
Like we've been podcasting for like 2 months or something.
Who would have thought? Look at
Who would have thought? Not me.
Look at
I don't think.
Look at it.
Well then. Okay, well, right off the top, I want to ask you guys to like, to comment, and to subscribe. We've definitely seen an uptick in the shares, and we love that. We love seeing people in the comments, whether that's TikTok, Instagram, or on YouTube itself. Just hearing back from you guys does a whole bunch for us as far as structuring the podcast, things to talk about. Even I saw somebody on Instagram saying, it's not available in the country that I'm in, and we were able to kind of direct them to our link tree. So for anybody, I guess if you're watching on YouTube, it's irrelevant, but Spotify, Apple Music, literally anywhere that you can consume podcast content, we are there. And if you're having trouble, just like that person, whether it's in the comments or the DMs, let us know, and we'll try and sort it out from our side.
We're digitally omnipresent.
Right.
I'll email it to you.
No, guys, like we are past halfway to 100 subscribers.
Yeah.
You guys are amazing. Thank you so much. And so I do want to appreciate you guys for all the support, but also, let's keep it pushing.
Yeah.
Stay zealous.
Let your fire never go out.
Right.
I'm going to introduce... Oh.
Okay. We're being very zealous.
And the wall of Jericho.
Amen, sister.
Don't you worry now. Just hold your head high. Don't you worry now. Just hold your head high. Don't turn around. The prize is not behind you. Keep moving forward.
And action.
So before we get too deep into the episode, we actually have some very exciting news here on set. So as we've been talking over the last 8 episodes, 9, 10, 11, what are we, over the last few episodes, we have referenced a particular man in our lives, feels weird, but in the lives of he's in the room. His name is Love. Let's just give it up for Love.
Woo, woo, woo. Make some noise, y'all. That's my husband.
It's Pastor Love.
Do you want to say hi?
Hi, everyone.
So he's officially our first guest, which is super exciting, even though
he's already a guest.
He's always here, but
shadow.
The reason that we have him on set today is because last episode we kind of went on a tangent about just how we feel as far as the male presence in church or in our homes is when it comes to leaderships and provision and what the Bible says and what the world says. And so we thought it would be a really good idea to have an actual man present to maybe counter and shed some light on his perspective. Of course, we are just 3 Christian girlies trying our best. So obviously there's information that we're not privy to or that we have only been able to understand through our perspectives. Yeah. So we just thought it was a value to have him here.
And even last week we talked about representation.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And
we're
just women.
Yeah. Our final point last week too was just we cannot counter toxic masculinity or just this toxic ideals in our society with more toxicity, but we need to foster a space to allow those conversations to happen and to allow men and women to feel free to exert themselves in the office that the Lord has called them to be. And so we do want to lead by example, and so this is our way of doing that, just because a lot of we cannot have conversations about people without those people, and I find that that's a lot of things that we do in society. And so we want to invite our top guy just to provide a fresh perspective on this subject, and hopefully you guys will enjoy this conversation and have something important to take away from it.
Beautiful. Okay, well, that being said, as per usual, I want to do a question of the week. This one, it's very broad, very generic, but I wanted us to get, the audience to get a good idea of Love's personality, just the way that he reasons along with us, and then we'll kind of dive in, if that's cool. Yeah?
Are you ready for this?
Are you ready, Love?
Love, are you ready for this?
I'm nervous, but I'm ready.
Aww. Okay, so my question of the week. Would you rather be stuck in an endless conversation with someone who's convinced they know the exact date of the second coming?
What?
or be the only speaker on a Sunday, from Sunday school to worship to the sermon to closing prayer. So either you're stuck in a conversation where someone says June 31st, 2026, Jesus will be here, and you cannot convince them otherwise, or you are the only person that speaks at church for the entire Sunday service.
Wait, I'm confused.
How long is
Like,
this conversation?
For every Sunday until Jesus comes?
No, just one Sunday. So one conversation, however long that if you're stuck there for an hour, you're stuck there for an hour. But regardless of what facts, what biblical knowledge, what YouTube videos you want to pull up, they are unable to be convinced that they are wrong, or there's no way to know. And you can't get out of the conversation until they're ready to end the conversation. Or you're the only person who speaks on a Sunday from beginning to end.
Option 2.
Option 2, easily?
Yeah.
Okay.
Brother?
I would say option 1.
Why?
Well,
I'm actually...
Hey.
I'm not really a public speaker.
Aw,
Okay, yeah.
true.
So I would actually not necessarily entertain the conversation with the person who thinks that they know the second coming. But I think I would have enough patience to hear them out and try my best to convince them. But ultimately, like, their faith is their faith. So, but yeah, speaking in front of people for a whole 2-3 hours is kind of tasking for me. So
See,
I hear
I
that.
don't think
I
I would do it.
I agree, but so I learned this new thing on TikTok this week called the Irish goodbye.
Okay.
And
love
it's
Irish
literally
goodbyes.
where you just leave.
Yeah, you don't say anything
You
to
don't say a
anyone. You
word.
just peace.
And so, like, I feel like I could exit that conversation with a good old healthy Irish goodbye.
The
Whereas,
conversation with the person?
yeah,
Okay.
where I'm committed to, like, opening prayer, Sunday school, praise and word. Like, have to do the whole shebang.
No, but that's the thing, though. Like, I feel like with church, I'm the one talking, so I have control on when I want it to end. It doesn't have to be so structural. Whereas with the person, someone said you cannot. It's for however long they want to.
And it's not Irish goodbye that you're in a room of people. It's just you and them.
Yeah.
We will Irish goodbye to your face.
Okay, so you're picking option 1?
Think again.
Because this is my thing. You and Love are both picking option 1, but Love is like, I have
Wow,
enough
you really are
understanding.
siblings.
I have enough understanding and patience to get through the conversation and see their side of it, even if I don't agree. You're like, I'm picking number 1 because I want to leave as soon as possible. And I don't know if you have a realistic perspective.
Yeah, then I'll have to go option 2.
Option 2.
Yeah, it's praise and worship all from beginning
That's.
to
I
end.
just knew that's what you were about to say.
Praise and worship from beginning to end. And then, a little spoken word here, a little spoken word there.
That's crazy.
A little call to worship here, call to worship there.
Okay.
As the
Okay.
Spirit leads.
Amen, sister.
Okay, well, I think that's a good question of the week then, to just kind of paint the room, right?
What's your answer?
Girl. The thing is, like, I genuinely hate being up there in front of everyone. But also, when you're, like, when someone is just, like, refusing to understand things, that's also very, very taxing.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to have to pick number 1, almost for the same reason that Love is saying, where I think that conversation is just going to hit a point where I'm just going to be like, okay, like, if you think so, like, we'll see, like, catch you on that date. Hopefully we all make it, like,
I'm one of those people, like, one of the worst things you can do to me is force me to entertain somebody I don't want to entertain. It's not, I don't hate small talk. I think small talk is valuable. Like, that might sound like an unpopular opinion because everybody wants to be cold these days and say, oh, I hate small talk. I actually love small talk with people that I love doing small talk with.
I think everyone does, though. Like, everyone loves doing small talk with people they love doing small talk with.
No, there are people, like, I've seen people on social media just like, oh, like, just go straight to the point. I'm like, what's the beauty of life if I just go straight to the point?
I feel like people that say that don't know boundaries because I'm like, not everyone that you meet needs to have, like, a very in-depth, introspective conversation with.
I see
Like,
what I mean.
don't trauma dump on me. I just met you 2 seconds ago, Linda. Keep it to yourself. And let's just talk about the weather.
Hey, at least Brenda is on her off day.
She might make an appearance later. We don't know. Okay, so you're saying only speaker on Sunday. You said only speaker on Sunday?
Yeah.
Conversation. Okay. So that's good, though. Then we have a very divided room
Nice
for
and
this
even.
conversation. Right?
Division.
Okay, so the main point I think that we wanted to bring Love here for is that I think as a collective we felt that in church settings, I don't know if we really touched on like home settings, but definitely in church settings we do feel that men have taken a backseat in a significant way, which women have been filling, or at least felt obligated to fill. And once we stepped into that space, we're then being criticized from the same men that are not willing to occupy those spaces. And that's kind of the general feeling on the topic from us three and our experiences. Understanding that our lived experience is not everybody's experience, but to the best of our understanding, that's kind of the scope of our perspective. So I guess my first question to you, Love, is just, do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you think, firstly, that men have taken a step back in church? If no, why? If yes, why?
Well, to give a bit of context as to where I'm coming from, I am a PK, pastor's child, so I've seen a whole bunch of things. I was born and raised in the church. So for the most part, I would say yes. I've seen men take a back seat in a few areas. Depends on where you're speaking of. There's two people in the room who are choir members. I'm also a choir member, for example. And earlier on in our years in choir, we had a leader before Queen who would pretty much take care of intro, praise, and worship. And now we rarely see that male in particular leading unless he's assigned or forced to sing. So it's a tough thing to see, to be honest. Like, not that I don't love you guys leading worship or praise. You guys are very, very in the spirit when you guys lead. But yeah, it's like, guys, we're also supposed to be spirit filled as well. But yeah, for some reason we just don't feel led to do those things like lead worship, lead praise, and it's sad, to be honest.
Would you say then that the type of service is different? Like you mentioned specifically, like praise and worship as like that, like outlet, that specific outlet or example of service. Would you say that, like, there are more areas or different areas in the church that you see like younger men more interested in than others?
No, like not even, I mean,
Or it's like an overall?
I mean, guys, my sample size is pretty small. But I've choir is my main, I guess, example, but I've also seen areas where like Bible studies, being an usher,
Yeah.
for example. Rarely do you see any males now being ushers for some reason. It's mainly like women who are the ushers. I've also been opportune to go to different other churches for different events.
Yeah.
RCN Remnant Christian Network is one of them as well too. And I can tell you that the ratio between girls and guys who are ushers is like 70 to 30.
Yeah.
70% are women and the 30% are guys.
Yeah. I have a question because you mentioned that they might be spirit filled, but they don't actually feel led. Do you think it's possible to be spirit filled but not led to serve in the house of the Lord?
No. So if you're filled with the Spirit, you're going to want to be in His house and do things and for the house in the church, right? So
yeah.
I think, to be honest, it's like they're not necessarily Spirit filled or as filled with the Spirit.
Yeah.
I love that you are able to just say no, like flat like that. I think I've seen a lot of people kind of dance around like, just because I'm not an usher doesn't mean that I'm not spirit filled. And there's a part of that I do believe, but just with my own walk and like the walks that I see with the people around me, when you have that spirit in you, you're like, by force, by fire, even if you actually do not want to do it, you're like, for God, there's nothing I won't do. And so it kind of supersedes whatever backseat you really do want to take. And I've expressed to Queen on multiple occasions, like, how do you think God would feel if I just like skipped this particular responsibility? And she was like, you talk to him too, like, you know exactly how he would feel. And I'm like, you're right.
I've had those moments where I'm like, honestly, I'm not even, like, there's sometimes where I'm like, honestly, I'm not even gonna come to choir today. Like, I don't have the time, blah, blah, blah. And then, like, somehow I'll find myself in my car driving to church. Just so happens to be a couple hours before choir practice. It just so happens that choir practice starts. I get up and I start, and it's almost like, even if I didn't want even if like fleshly, like bodily, I didn't have it in me to like do that service, it's something I can't say no to, even if I tried, even if I wanted to.
I'm glad you said that because I wanted to ask you a question, and this, I feel like this is a theme that we have been talking about in private a lot, but I find that one of the running themes when it comes to like men taking a backseat, and love, you can tell me if I'm wrong or right, is this idea that the women got it. Like you said, right? Like you can, I think outside of the Holy Spirit, you cannot sit home and say, I'm not going to come to choir practice because you know that you're one of the main members of the choir that is most active. And if you're not there, there's going to be a gap. As opposed to a couple other members of the choir where they can be like, hey, if I stay home today, Queen and Amory got it. Just because of there's that lack of a sense of responsibility. So I don't know, like, you can make your point, but my question is, love, is that something you see when it comes to men in the church, like not occupying certain positions because they just assume that it's a woman's place to do certain things?
I wouldn't say it's that they assume it's a woman's place to do those things or other things. I would say it's more of what you said before, that, oh no, yeah, she's available, so she's gonna do it.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily a woman. It could just be anyone else.
Yeah, in general.
Right? Like, I'm not gonna come and lead like opening prayer because XYZ is gonna be there to do it, or like someone else will do it. And I think part of that is like taking ownership of the space and the office that you're occupying, as in, yes, there might be someone else that is available to do it, but I am who's called to do it. And all because someone can do something doesn't necessarily mean that they're the right person to do it.
That too, yeah, because we've had multiple instances, like as early or as recent rather as last week, where somebody was asked to do something. I've asked this person to on multiple occasions, and the response is not just that I cannot do it, or the immediate response is like, but you can do it. And it's like, where is the sense of responsibility, and how can we cultivate that?
So, to your point, right, when you had said it's not necessarily a woman can do this, it's that anyone else can do this. Do you guys think that if women stopped stepping up, that men would then step up? Or do you think that if women stopped stepping up, things would just fall apart?
Love, what do you think?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
I feel like it depends. Are we still talking about in church or just?
It could be in church. You could take it from a general standpoint.
See, in the beginning, of course, God said Adam is not good to be alone. That's why he gave him a wife or a bone of his bone. So I feel like, yes, things would fall apart for the most part if women were not involved. Like, let's just take an example, the children's ministry, right? Like, not that men can't take care of children or anything, but because women are just naturally born with the ability to raise kids and take care of kids, they're more drawn towards the children's ministry, right? And so, not saying men can't do that, but it would be hard for men to, be involved in the service as well as take care of kids. Like, they kind of have to do one or the other, right? So, honestly, to answer the question, I feel like it would fall apart if women would just take a backseat and not do anything, or not be involved at all.
I want to put you in the hot seat a little bit.
Sure.
I'm sorry.
That's your husband.
No. I'm gonna keep it respectful, obviously. No, because you mentioned women are born with the ability to raise and nurture kids, right? Do you think that ideology can be harmful in the sense that children need a certain level of balance? The same way that they need a woman to be able to nurture, they also need a man not only to be a figure of authority but to also nurture, right? Like a couple episodes ago, somebody gave the example of you were hugging the girls and one of the boys came and said like, oh, do you miss me too, or do you want to give me a hug too? And I feel like if there was also a guy there that was able to show the kids that level of affection, like we wouldn't have those gaps, like even in terms of gift giving, like knowing what to give to the boys in the same way we know what to give to the girls. And I think that ideology of, oh, women are born with certain things, I understand where it's coming from, but I think just resting on that can cause more harm than good, because it gives other parties the liberty to just take a backseat because, oh, I don't naturally have those traits. But it doesn't come. Certain things are hardwired into our DNA, yes, but even as we are raised, we are cultured and we are raised to be those things. Whereas our parents don't actually see men in that way, because they also assume that men naturally don't have it, so we're not even going to bother cultivating those skills in them as well. So what do you think of that? Sorry for the rant.
So yeah, I do agree with you. I feel like there should be a balance in the sense that, like, okay, if there's, let's say, 2 weeks of a female teacher, maybe another week there's a male teacher teaching them, because there is the imbalance of, I guess, if we're only having a female teacher, then the guys feel left out. I don't know if I answered your question, but pretty much, like, it's the church that I know, honestly, like, it's very difficult to find that balance because of the culture that's in the church that I know.
Yeah. Going back to Summer's like original question with would things fall apart if like women just stopped? I'd like to believe that when it comes to God, like he wouldn't let anything fall apart, period. Like if it's Sunday service, he will put men or whoever is available into those positions to make sure that those like things continue to run smoothly.
Yeah.
But I do think, like, going based off, like, what you guys were saying is it would be difficult. Like, there are characteristics that a woman carries that is necessary for things to run smoothly and vice versa. And it's more so, like, we need to learn how to navigate that together as partners rather than separate parties.
Yeah. So to both of your points, first, Queen had asked, like, do you think it's harmful, right, to be carrying, like, organizing a church body in that way with the assumption, although it is a correct assumption, women are hardwired with things like empathy and stuff like that. I think the issue, at least the way that I perceive it, the issue in, like, the female camp is that those assumptions almost get weaponized, right? Because Love had even said, like, it would be difficult for a man to do that and be part of service, but women are doing that and being part of service, right? Apart from being, like, I almost said head honcho, apart from being, like, a bishop on the stand, like, on Wednesday services, women participate. We're talking about being deacons and ushers and teachers and Bible study leaders and all the things, like, all of those roles that men, I mean, I feel like at one point in time we're, like, exclusively running are now being, it's like a 80-20 split between men and women. And because that feeling of, that assumption of she's born with it, so she should be doing those things, then gets weaponized, and then you feel unappreciated, right? And I think that's where a lot of the issues are coming from, that I don't know if men are necessarily aware of how those actions and assumptions are coming off. And then, sorry, did you want to say something?
No. I understand the question a bit more now, because I think Queen went on a rant a bit, but yeah, I do understand that a bit. Like, yeah, the assumptions are eventually being weaponized, and honestly, for me, I feel like it boils down to being spirit filled. To be honest, because like, for me, like, you guys see all the things that I do in the church, and it's not necessarily because I like doing it. I like fixing a camera that I fixed 2 weeks ago that's now broken. It's because, like, I know that that's what God has called me to do. And so that's why I just get involved in everything possible that I know that I can help out with, right? And so I feel like when you're spirit filled or filled with the Spirit and love God, you're going to get involved in whichever way you can.
Yeah,
even if it breaks your back. Like,
I think it's important to mention to the audience too, like, we didn't pick Love because we think that he's doing the negative things. If anything, he like supersedes, like exceeds all of anyone's expectations. He's always here all the time doing something for someone. So we didn't invite him to be like, love, like, why are you horrible? It's not that. It's just having an available male perspective, and love always makes himself available because of the spirit-filled heart posture. To Emery's point though, when you had said I believe that God would still make things work instead of it falling apart. When you were talking, it reminded me of a verse. It's talking about there's like I think it's the white throne. So when we say like faith without deeds is dead, right? And it's the throne that your deeds get tested, right? And it says that all of your deeds, it'll pass through fire, right? And like things that are gold and silver and all the way down to like things that are made of like hay and grass, like it's going to test the quality through the fire. And even the ones of like the poorest quality, they'll be saved, but it will be like somebody escaping fire, right? So like, yes, I believe that God can make all things happen and run smoothly, but I think if churches were really put to the test, it would almost be that same scene where it's the churches that are really made of, you know, iron and silver and gold, like they will be able to pass through that test and it'll be fine. But it'll really show the character of some churches that are gold on the outside and straw on the inside. You know what I mean?
So with the term spirit filled has come up quite a few times, and I think even that, because love, you said it boils down to being spirit filled. I find that the ratio of men to women in the church who like seek to be spirit filled, like actively pursue that, is tremendously, in my opinion, skewed. Like I would say it's like a 70-30. And so I don't know, love, like what are some traditions that you think we can my first question is, do you think it's a lack of interest or is it a lack of infrastructure, like the reason why women seem to be more spirit filled, or desire to be more spirit filled than men?
I don't know, to be honest.
That's honest.
Like, because I don't see it as lack of interest, because even when I wasn't like 100% dedicated to God, like I still had an interest in church, coming to church and playing the drums and getting involved.
Now that brings up a question that I had, because we're speaking from the perspective of like having that mentorship like with our parents and so forth, but there are a lot of people that might be coming to church, men that are coming to church that don't have that, right? That don't have dad or mom that's like, you're gonna serve God, like to the point where it becomes such a habit in your younger years, right? Like you serve God in your youth so that it sustains you for the rest of your life. So how, I guess, do you fix that? Like what about the people that aren't privileged to have that like level of mentorship that early? Yeah,
just like to add to something as an example, right? Like back home, I was in the choir back home as well, and like all the instrumentalists were males, and they will not come to church unless you pay them. Like if they didn't have a vested interest, they won't come. Wow. Like if you don't pay for their transportation, they won't come.
I don't know why I was looking surprised, because it's the same thing here.
And so like, love, you came home and like literally the drummer that day, that Sunday, after he stayed for 3 hours, he wouldn't leave unless my mom gave him money. And so that's the attitude. So I think, like, just to add to Admin's point, like, love, we can be speaking from the perspective of people who were raised in the church, where even if you're, like Amri said, like your flesh is unwilling, you've been conditioned and hardwired to be in church on Sunday morning, even if you didn't want to. And so I don't know if you can maybe broaden the perspective a bit more, like for people who weren't raised in the church, who don't have that desire just at the very basic level to come into the presence of the Lord. Is it like the church's structure that could be preventing them from pursuing the Holy Spirit or pursuing spiritual gifts in that way? Like, what is it that can be done better?
Yeah, we can say it's partly the church structure as well too, or infrastructure. Because I can only relate back to myself, like once again. So before I actually took my faith seriously, I'm not saying that I wouldn't Like I wouldn't be bothered missing church, but it's a lot different now than before.
Yeah.
Like if I miss church, I'd be like, okay, well, I miss church. There's other people that can handle what I've done, but that what I did in church. Like there's other people who are available to help out and whatnot. But now that I've taken my faith more seriously, like if I miss church or if I'm late, even, like there's an issue with me, and so, in terms of like the infrastructure with church as a whole, I feel like because of the younger generations and how life is here in the Western world for the most part, like you have to come at them with a unique way so that they can experience God in a unique way. So and the thing with the unique way is like obviously it's more modern. Like if you look at churches like Campus Rush is a big one here in Canada. Like the way their head pastor dresses, the way they go about doing evangelism and stuff, it's a unique way, and I would say it works for the most part. Like you can see young youth on fire and they enjoy coming to church. But is it effective? I don't know specifically, because I can point to a handful of people who go there who are still one foot in the world, one foot in the church. But I mean, at least they have one foot in the church for the most part. So hopefully they can be both feet in and they get on fire that way. But with the, like, I guess the old school kind of churches where it's just you come to church on Sunday, you sit down, listen to the word and sing a few hymns, and that's it, and you go. Like for the person who never grew up in church or is coming for the first time, they'd be like, hey, that was not really what I was vibing. Like I came here for something new or different, and like, yeah, I don't think I'm going to go back to that church again. So sorry, I don't know if I answered your question, but I feel like the infrastructure does play a whole part in like.
So essentially, the gist is like having a creative approach in terms of like how to access that demographic.
Yeah, I think there's like a generational gap.
But the thing too is like this struggle is not limited to young men. We see this taking a seat back with older men in the church.
So I feel like, sorry.
No, go.
But I just to like bridge off what you were about to, like the older men, I think that's where the mentorship is supposed to be coming to. And if they're not, like older generations aren't willing to try to connect with the younger generation to serve as mentors, then it's almost like.
Yeah. So Queen and I had watched a couple different things about like what culture does to generations, and one of the quotes I think Queen shared with me was that culture carries sin through generations, right? And it's just this idea that regardless of what the outside world is doing, whatever is working for them, that's none of my business. My culture precedes anything else, right? And so I think that's kind of what has been planted in the minds of like the older men that we come into contact with, that even if you were to bring a new idea to them, if it's countercultural to their culture, it doesn't matter, like it's irrelevant, which is sad to see. But I do want to believe that with younger Christians like us, like Love, pouring into what we can pour into. And I've seen it even with the Sunday school kids. Like when we first started, they were all, terrified of the enemy, and they were scared that God was just ready to punish them and like all of these things. And like being able to have real conversations with them, and them actually being excited to learn, excited is crazy, but excited to learn about Satan and like who that person actually is in the Bible and where do you stand against them, and opening their mind to look at it from a different perspective that's not necessarily disregarding their culture, but it's just because your parents have done it one way doesn't necessarily mean that's the way for you, and that's okay, right? And at least being able to open the doors for those conversations. I did have a question for you guys though, because again, back to your point of you don't think that the church would fall apart if women took a step back. Do you think that could be interpreted as like a lack of faith as women? Like I think that maybe, don't quote me, I'm not speaking for all women, but there's a feeling, and only because I've had that feeling of just, if I don't do this, if I don't fulfill this leadership role, if I don't walk out these responsibilities to the fullest extent, then this project or this day, this sect of the church is going to fail. And so I I like put even more pressure on myself to make sure that I'm filling that role, where maybe if I was like, you know what, I have faith that God is going to sort it out, I'm going to take a few steps back and see if someone is willing to carry this mantle, for better lack of a better words, that it would encourage more people to step into the place. Like, do you think that's a faith issue?
I think it's both a lack of trust and a presence of pride, like believing that it's your hard work that is holding the kingdom of God together. But also literally, as when Anne first said it, like, do we think if women took a step back that things would fall up? No, you said that even if we did take a step back, that God wouldn't allow things to fall apart. And I think he does allow things to fall apart. And I don't think that's necessarily wrong.
Yeah.
Because he does that to expose and reveal certain things to us.
Absolutely.
And then he leads us on how to rebuild and reconstruct those things. And so I think it's one of those situations where men and women will have to work in tandem, because at the end of the day, like Love said, you know, in Genesis, the Lord said it's not good for a man to be alone. Like, there was a reason why God implemented this unit of male and female in the first place. So none was never
Supposed to exist
expected to exist without the other. So the problem is now, like, how do we come to that place of collaboration? Because even with the kids department, for example, there was it wasn't even a consideration for a man to be a part of that project, and no man raised up your hand either. And so and it's not just with the children's department, there's multiple departments where it's a majority female, whether it's the choir, it's the ushers, and I think in our church it's really only the media department that is, you know, majority male. But even with that, we still see women raising their hands to, you know, to contribute to that. But when it comes to other faculties, it's not the same energy that's given. So I think our main issue there, it's just like having that sense of urgency and responsibility to even just raise up your hand and say, I would like to help out with that.
So on that note, I had another question of the week, and maybe we can kind of round up on this if everyone can kind of give their perspective. So the question was, what does being a godly man look like to you in today's world? Like, to you, to me, to Emery, and then to Love. Just because we're saying, like, this is the type of character, this is what we need, this is what we don't need. In today's world, if someone were to say, Queen, tell me what a godly man looks like what would you say?
Surrender.
Wow, why'd you take that off my list?
My bad. I think everything stems from submission. We were talking about Ephesians last week, right? Like, everything was as Christ is, as Christ loved, as Christ died. And that's where everything stems from. Like, you were talking about culture. I find that especially in the African community, like, both the men and the women do this, but I feel like the men are really the enforcers of this, like, aspect or ideology of my culture. In my culture, you will never talk to me like that. In my culture, a woman has to kneel down to serve the food and this and that. And it's like, who are you submitted to, your culture or God? Because once you're submitted to God, being led to lead praise in the choir, being led to teach the children about God, being led to, you know, take up space in his kingdom would be second nature, in my opinion.
Even, like, when you were talking about, like, the cultural differences, like, the one thought that came to my head was, like, whose culture, though? Like, is it my African Caribbean, like, descent, like, that culture and that hierarchy, or is it what God has put in his word for us to follow?
You just reminded me of a point I wanted to make. Do you know what's interesting about this whole culture conversation is that God was always meant to be the one to inform culture. It was never meant to be human traditions, right? Like, when you look at the children of Israel, he instructs them, pass down this book of law to the generations and generations to come so that they will not depart from it. Proverbs, raise up a child in the way they should go so that when they're grown, they will not depart from it. Our culture was always supposed to be informed by the principles of God. And obviously with the fall of man and all of that, we strayed away from that. And so I think that culture could be a topic that we tackle, because it's not even just limited to men. Like, even in the Black community, our culture is a big part of who we are, which in its entirety is not a bad thing per se, but it can easily become an idol.
Yeah, even to go a step further, I remember reading, like, when God was taking the Israelites out of Egypt, like, he even gave them, like, a different month, right? So, like, when you see like Orthodox sects, like, practice their different holidays, whether it's Christmas or Easter, like it literally is on a completely different day in a different month. That's how badly God wanted them to be like separate, like do not celebrate on the same days as them, do not call what you're doing what they're calling what they're doing, right? Like, so I love that you really, I think that you said it very well, as far as the only culture that we're supposed to have is God's culture. So you gave some examples about like a godly man in the church, right? Submitted to God and being a leader and all of those things. Is there like a go-to? Because we've been very much focused on church and being like a leader, a man, a Christian head of the home, like that also relates to like in relationships, right? So is there anything that you would say to add on to the examples that you gave?
Like outside of surrender?
Yeah.
I think it might be in line with this, but humility is very important.
Queen, like, stop taking...
I'm sorry. Because I was going to give this example on my next topic, but do you know how much gentleness it requires for an elephant to move around the jungle? Mm-hmm. I think the bigger you are, the gentler you should be. But we have reversed it in society where because you're big, you just have to trample on people. Or
you have the right to.
You have the right to. Yeah. Exactly. And I feel like once men understand how powerful meekness is, how powerful humility is, how powerful gentleness is, it's going to be because Jesus describes himself as being meek and lowly. Jesus, the king of the universe. Yeah. And so, like I said, surrender and humility would really work in tandem to amplify those gifts of leadership and authority in the life of a man, I think.
Beautiful.
One of the I think Love said it to me, was like true power is like restraint. And like all because you have the opportunity or you have the ability or authority to do something, that doesn't, all because you exercise that, like there's no power in that, but the power to say I can do something but I'm not going to do it for this reason is powerful. I was going to say the same thing, like humility. I think humility makes it, like we said, like we were reading today in Proverbs 3, like don't despise the correction of the Lord, right? No one here is perfect. We're just trying our best, right? We've articulated that so many times, and I believe that for both like men and women in the church. And I think like a true godly man, a godly woman is able to be humble to the correction of the Lord from whoever it comes from, preferably the Lord. But yeah, humility is probably number one characteristic. Even in a relationship, like you're not meeting, like if your wife or your partner comes up to you and says like you're not meeting my needs, it's very easy to like take great offense to that. But a humble spirit and a humble mind, a humble heart is like, all I ever wanted to do is be pleasing. And so how do I make that correction and not have it be a,
war of the egos?
And yeah, I think I would 100% agree with both of the things that you're saying, being submitted, being humble. I think a lot of the characteristics that are assumed to be hardwired into women, if men were to actually try to pursue those qualities, and I'm not saying, be feminine, cha-cha heels outside, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying like things like empathy, right? We've had speakers on the altar, command women, like, you need to be getting married before you have cellulite, like, and it's just like, how would you feel if a woman stood up here and said, you need to find a wife before your hairline recedes? Like, you would be uncomfortable with that statement. So like the fact that you are saying this with full chest, it's a little bit tone deaf. And I think things like empathy,
a lot tone deaf,
things like empathy, things like patience, things like emotional intelligence that are expected of a woman, that are seen as like a degrading comment to make if she doesn't have those things. If you're willing to pursue those, it goes a long way. And we talk about, love languages, and I don't know if that's necessarily like of the spirit or whatever, but the way that you're able to understand how other people receive information, receive love, even like receive information from God, right? Like there are times where God and I have very personal moments, and God knows how to get to my heart in those moments, right? And like how much more my husband, how much more my leaders, my teachers, my mentors, if you're willing to pursue it in that way, like it could only be beneficial, right? So I think that there is a desire for men to be leaders. I think maybe there's just been a fall away on what that actually means and what it takes to get there.
I love that you ended on that, because I was from the minute you said leaders, like a question came into my mind. I feel like even the term leader can skew your perspective in a sense, because to them it's like, okay, if it's not a position of leadership, then I shouldn't desire it because I'm supposed to be the leader. But I think just in general, men have a place in the church, even if it's not a position of leadership, like with a title. You are called to serve in whatever capacity that is.
I'm just gonna get a little nerdy for a second, because I did a minor in leadership.
Sure.
But I think the very first thing was when there are millions of definitions of leadership, and the most common one is the ability to influence someone, a group of people, to a common goal, a common vision. And that does not equal the loudest person in the room or the person that talks the most or gets the most screen time. It's the person with the most influence, and there are so many different ways that you could influence, literally just your character. I had a girl come up to me at church, and she was just like, Amory, you're my role model. And I'm like, I actually didn't ask for that at all. Please stop. And it was just my existence and my attitude and the way I carried myself is enough to influence someone else's behavior. The way that you dress is influence enough. So I feel like sometimes we look at leadership as a very connotative look at it, instead of actually understanding what is the job that they're doing.
Perspective, yeah.
Literally, the verse this morning, during opening prayer, right? It's Timothy 4 verse 16. Watch your life and doctrine closely. Persevere in them, because if you do, you will save both yourself and your hearers, right? And so and I think there are so many places in the Bible that talk about just you cultivate this attitude of worship and being spirit filled and God loving and fearfully made, so that when other people are able to see that in you, there's a saving grace that happens there. There's an outpouring of God's presence, right? So as much as we want to submit and be, wonderful women of God and fulfill our roles as helpers, if you are not persevering in the characters of God, it's very hard to follow. I can only follow you as far as you're following God, right? I can't cross that line. And unfortunately, if that's disrespectful because I won't follow you in the wrong direction, then I think we need to take a look at it, right?
Yeah. Love hasn't answered the question.
Yeah, so love... What does a godly man look like today? In church, out of church, what is the characteristic of a godly man?
Yeah, you guys hit the nail on the head. I believe that's a saying. With the whole surrender and humility and even empathy as well. And yeah, honestly, the first thing that came to my mind, is not to be cliche or anything, was the word love, my namesake. Because I feel like pretty much everything sort of just falls under that umbrella, right? When you think of godly, it's to be godlike. God so loved the world that he gave his only son. And then it all flows through that. When you love somebody so much, you patient. Surrender, you're patient, you're humble,
long suffering.
When you love God and his work, you pray, you read your Bible, you do his work, you fill in gaps where they need to be filled. And to touch on the topic of leadership, my dad, who is the bishop, told me that there's a lot of people who look up to you, and I'm like, dude,
is it because I'm tall?
Yeah,
literally or figuratively.
I'm just out here loving God and doing his work, but in that process of being loving and loving God, you somehow just become a leader and start leading people. And before I knew it, I was the leader of the media department. It wasn't like they poured oil on my head.
Or it's not you desired even to be.
Exactly. It's not that I desired. I just loved doing the work, right?
Yeah.
And so I feel like, to me as well, just being a loving person and loving God and his work is what it means to be a godly man, in a sense. Yeah.
I think I don't remember who said it, but I find that people that desire to be leaders or desire leadership shouldn't sit down. And so I feel maybe not even the desire for leadership, but just the desire to serve and to wait on God. LOI, I saw a preaching where someone was a lot of people take their waiting on God as like sitting and waiting, where they should be taking it as like waiting, like ready to serve.
I like that.
And I was like, oh, clock it. Oh, and like, yeah, I feel like Love said, like the more that you serve, you not stumble into these positions of leadership like you weren't ready for them, but you end up in a,
God leads you.
yeah, like God will lead you into those and put you in position to be a leader because of how faithful you've been of service. Without that acknowledgement, without the
Like, if you even look at all the people that were called into positions of leaderships, like if you strip away all their physical attributes, it was God saw their service.
Yeah.
God saw the way Saul served his father while searching for his donkeys. God saw the way David served his father while tending to his sheep. God saw the way Joseph served his brothers, you know. Like, even though Joseph already knew he had a calling on his life, he was still respectful, he was still humble, right? And there's a plethora of examples we could give, but it all stems, like Love said, from your love. The love, like whatever you have love for, whether it's singing, whether it's media, whether it's people, whether if it's speaking, do that, and the Lord will lead you into that space of influence.
Yeah, Paul literally talks about, there's a verse, right? Like, he's like, if I have tongues, if I have prophecy, if I have all these things and I don't have love, like, it's just clanging cymbals, right? And like, imagine just following clanging cymbals. Like, it would hurt, you know, it would be very uncomfortable. So
There's bare people out here following clanging cymbals. I don't know how y'all's eardrums are doing.
and also I feel like also like I feel like there's space to also like integrate like your personal passions and your personal loves into like service for God. I think like sometimes people are like, oh well, like I'm not interested in ushering, or I don't want to be a singer, so like I can't serve God. But I'm like, here's where you get to be creative. If you're super into finance, there are a whole bunch of kids at church that need a math tutor that you could be served. Like there are various ways that you can take your own like talents, even the things that you don't see as talents, and continue to give them back to their creator. Because I feel like a lot of like Sunday school, it feels very feminine. Like singing, it feels very feminine. You know, like there are still ways to integrate your masculine.
No, literally,
vibes,
like
you
even
know?
back home, like you guys know me, I love whimsy. Okay, I'm very whimsical. I love to daydream, and our church, like this was the very last Christmas before I came to Canada. And we were just looking for something like fun to do. And I came up with this whole idea. Like my mom had the idea of like a Christmas village where we would have like different vendors, like have stands. Honestly, I really do get it from my mama. But I was like, okay, how about we do like a musical? And I literally had this man out here like singing and dancing and playing like Jesus and Mary, and it was a beautiful bit. Even on top of that, like I created this whole like pageant, like beauty pageant, where like I did the girls' makeup, I styled them, I dressed them, I was teaching choreography, I was teaching the songs and this and that, and this was something that our church had never had. And to this day, like my mom keeps telling me like, bro, we really miss you, like we really wish we had somebody else that could do that. And the church didn't even know that was something that they needed, right? And so even with Love, like if you see all the technology and
go watch the live streams, they hit.
Yeah, like the technical infrastructure we have here, I don't think these are things that Bishop thought of. Like, oh, we need this and we need that. Like, some of them could have been, but it was just Love's, like, passion and creativity that he brought. And he was like, you know what, we could do things this way. We could set up a camera here. We could do the lighting this way and this and that.
And to add to that, there's a need for the older people, the people of authority that are in the church, to support that, right? Like, as much as Love likes photography, if he came into church with a bunch of cameras and everyone was like, no, and they were very resistant to it, like, there, boom, you just crush, someone's passion, and then someone else's, like, potential service to God. I think it's really important for us to support that and to, of course, like,
allow it to flourish. Yeah.
And to be a part of the blossoming.
Okay. Well, I think it was a great conversation, very well-rounded. Love, do you have anything you want to add before we sign out? Any final remarks?
Well, men, we have been attacked, and I need you guys to find your fire again.
Amen.
And just love God, and hopefully we see more men getting active and stepping up in church, really.
Step up.
Did you enjoy talking to us?
Yeah, for the most part.
Would you do it again?
Who was your favorite?
I've known
Go
you my
on,
whole
say
life.
it. Don't be shy.
The man shall leave his family and cling to his wife.
I can't hear you.
My wife.
Yeah. Okay, well, with that, guys, don't forget to try your best. Like, comment,
subscribe,
Amen, sister.
and share.
love you. See you all next week. Bye. So silly.
We love you.
Right now, just hold your head high. Don't you worry now. Just hold your head high. Don't turn around. The prize is not behind you. Keep